I want to play a little bit of John Middlekauff. John Middlekauff, I really enjoyed John. He does a nice job. And he talked a little bit about Brock Purdy, and I know you want to get into Brock Purdy. I do too. And here's John Middlekauff. He's got doubts about extending Purdy, and I know a lot of people do. So let's get into this. We'll play you John's comments, and then we'll react to it. Here's John Middlekauff, who used to be with Haberman and Middlekauff, and is now working for the Volume. Here we go.
I like Brock Purdy too. But before we even discuss money, let's just discuss his play. He has been a turnover machine in the second half of these games. And for whatever reason right now, Brock Purdy over the middle of the field is just not a reliable passer. But like when we talk about Brock Purdy's skill set, he clearly has talent. He clearly is a solid player. Decision-making is going to have to be a huge part of his game. And one of the knocks on Purdy coming out, part of the reason he fell to the 7th round wasn't just his physical limitations, is because his last year in college, he was throwing picks nonstop. And you watch him down the stretch, like the Niners, they were 6-9 coming into this game. But like just a couple weeks ago, they were in it with the Rams. And he's just become a turnover machine. And it's a problem. And when we talk about this huge amount of money, like I just think, how could you not be concerned? Honestly, how could you not be concerned? How could you be comfortable giving him this type of money when this is what's going on?
There you go. A little bit of John Middlekauff on the Third and Out podcast. So let's talk about this, because it is interesting that, what are we talking about? We're talking about a player who a year ago was 4th in the MVP voting, led his team to the Super Bowl. But what John says is accurate, which is that he has been a turnover machine in the second half of these games. And I think the whole thing is clarifying itself in that, is Brock Purdy a good quarterback? Yeah, he's a good quarterback. There's no question about that. And is he an elite quarterback? Is he in that top tier? No, he's not in that top tier. And that's clear also. So does he belong with Mahomes and Allen and Lamar and Joe Burrow? No, he doesn't. He's not, and he's not a future Hall of Famer, and he's not an all-time great. He is a what I think is a top 10 quarterback. I consider him a second-tier quarterback who's a top 10 guy. But I also think that you can't pay him $60 to $65 million at the top of the scale when it's pretty clear that he needs the surrounding cast. I mean, has last year to this year been any more clear? Last year, he had a terrific surrounding cast, and they went to the Super Bowl, and he played really well with a ton of poise in the NFC Championship game under pressure, and he kind of proved himself. Then he went in the Super Bowl and really played well and took the best quarterback of his era to overtime, and they lost the game. But I don't think they necessarily lost because Brock Purdy wet the bed or anything. He played well enough to win, and I think he's good enough to win with. But he's not going to be able to be like, jump on my shoulders and I'm carrying you, which is also why you cannot pay him $60 million. You can't pay him $60 million. You can't pay him $65 million. Why? Because he needs the surrounding cast. Look at what happened this year when he doesn't have weapons. Now, this year was a little bit different because it's not like some teams have lesser weapons, but they still have top tier guys. The Niners had great weapons, and then they had nobody. Now they're leaning on guys like Ronnie Bell. Their weapons this year. Last year they got 40 touchdowns from their top 3 guys. This year they've gotten 2 out of their top 3 guys. That's a huge drop back. So you can't pay him 60 to 65 million because you need to preserve that cap room in a cap sport so that he can have a surrounding cast. I would say to him very, very, to his agent, Kyle Strongton, I would say to him, hey, look, Kyle, here's the deal. Does Brock want to, what's Brock's career goals? Let's start our conversation right there. what are his career goals? Are his career goals to win the most rings, or is his career goal to make the most money? And I won't fault you. Just be straight with me. And if he said, hey, his career goal is to win the most rings, then let's get a contract that compensates him fairly, and commits to him, but also gives us a chance to build around him so we can win a championship. Because if we're paying him $65 million, I don't think he's going to like the line that he's playing behind. But if we can make him, for closer to $50 million in that range, he's still handsomely compensated, more than he ever dreamt of, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And we can, the same way that the Eagles build a team around Hurts, we can build a team around him if he stays closer to the $50 million range. Yeah, and that's where that's the conversation I would have. I'll say this, though. I would not insult him and be like, you deserve the Baker contract, $30 million. That's it. I wouldn't do that. I would not go some strident, ridiculous, let's turn him off kind of a thing. Because there's plenty of teams out there that I think would pay him $30 million.
But do you think
there's teams out there that would pay him $40 million?
That's the question. Because I 100% agree with you, Larry, that Brock's not worth $60 million. There's no way. You got to.
You can't. You could make the argument that he's as good as Prescott, and Prescott's making 60.
Yeah,
but that's a losing argument because Prescott's not winning. Yeah, Prescott's Dallas isn't good.
Just because those teams are going to pay their quarterback because that's the market and that's what they want to pay doesn't mean the Niners need to do that. You have to look at his arm talent. He's had some injuries, and now he has another injury, right? And his arm is just never going to get to the point where he can make those money. Like I watched a lot of games, and this weekend I was watching these damn games, man, and I see these quarterbacks making these passes, these fourth quarter comes, and I'm just sitting there going, would Brock Purdy be able to do that? Like Herbert, JD5, Bo Nix, they're throwing the ball 60 yards out and without any pressure, like no problem. Does Brock do that? Does another team, would another GM be like, oh, we want Brock Purdy from, like, I don't know, bro. I don't think so, Larry. I just don't think another team is knocking on the door and saying, hey, what would you want it for Brock Purdy? Can we trade? I think the Niners love him. The fans love him. And he's a good quarterback. Like Middlekauff said, I agree with what Middlekauff said. I think he's good. He knows the Niners system. There's not a lot of options out there in free agency. Brock's kind of got the leverage in this situation. There's not a lot of good quarterbacks out there. Draft, you're not going to commit another Trey Lance situation and trade up to get a bad rookie quarterback. So they got to pay Brock. So he's kind of got the leverage. But
he was fourth in the MVP voting just a year ago.
That's great.
And literally led you to the Super Bowl with how he played in the second half against the Lions.
Cast around him, which every quarterback needs a good cast, but everything fell apart for him this season, and he just was so limited, man. And he's been in multiple opportunities where he could have won the game and shut up everybody. He could have shut me up right now, but he lost the games by throwing picks. I get there's a limitation with the O-line. They need to fix it regardless who's the quarterback, but they gave him opportunities, and he doesn't.
What's your offer?
I'm giving him $45 million a year. Take it or leave it.
How many years?
3 years.
How much guaranteed?
I'm going $100 million guaranteed.
So you're going 3 years at 45. Okay, so what's that? 135? Does that sound right?
About right.
135. 135 with how much guaranteed?
What did I say? 100?
100 guaranteed. That might get it done.
Might do it.
I mean, it's one, I know the argument would be like, hey, that's not the top of the scale. But my argument would be like, hey, man, what do you want to get out of your career? Because if it's just the biggest check, then you and us, we're not on the same page. And let's get you somewhere where you can get the biggest check, if that's really what you're about. If you're about the W, if you're about that 6th and 7th and 8th Lombardi trophy for the Niner trophy case, then let's get a number that is really, really good, and we'll even guarantee you more of it, because I have no problem giving him more of a guarantee because he's so solid off the field. Mm-hmm. But I agree with you. I'd like it to be in an ideal world. I think what you're hitting on is the ideal for the Niners. 3 years, 45 million, 100 guaranteed. That would be my guess.
That's a
That
good
would be
deal.
the ideal for the Niners. I think the ideal for Brock, because I think his agent would probably say, we agree that, we want to leave some for the rest of the roster, but how about 55? And you're going to say, how about 45?
He's,
And I
he's
think,
probably going to end up getting the 55. Yeah.
well, but that's what they're going to, I think Kyle, if neither side wants to fight, I mean, if you want to fight, offer him 30, or if you want to fight, Kyle, demand 65 or 70, then you have a fight. Then now you're going to fight. Okay. And if Parag wants to fight, offer him 30. Now you're fighting. Okay?
If you offer him 30, we for sure put it on the gloves. Yeah, that's
he's fighting. I mean, you're going to piss them off. They're going to, both. Here's the thing: get to a spot where you're not going to piss them off. I think a realistic spot for Purdy's agent is 55 million to ask for. I think a realistic spot for the Niners is to quote what you just quoted, Raj. I think you're right on. Basically, you're saying the Mahomes contract. We'll give you the Mahomes money.
Yeah,
and you know what? The Mahomes contract, since all the contracts are bigger, that might actually get it close to done. But my guess is that Brock's agent is going to ask. He's going to say, "Hey, we want to play ball with you guys. We don't want to insult anybody. We'll take 55." And I bet you anything, the Niners will come back with, "Hey, man, we don't want to insult you either, but how about 45?" And I think they settle on 50. And
yeah,
I think it's 3 years.
What's going to happen? Yeah.
My guess is 3 years, 150, 100 guaranteed. Round numbers.
I think so.
Round numbers.
So. I just hope they don't drag it out, because we know at the end of the day,
don't drag it out. Do not drag it out.
Don't drag it out.
We can't have a holdout. No, quarterbacks don't win in the NFL in the years they hold out.
You don't want to. We already saw what happened this offseason with holdouts. With the quarterback, it's even worse. Like, I'm not going to sit here and debate if they're going to pay. Like, I know they're going to pay Brock. Again, there's not a lot of options out there. I'm not saying he's horrible. He's just not elite. There's limitations, but this is your quarterback, okay, for the next couple of years, because there's not a lot of other options. He's good. He's good. They can win with him. He needs to work on his decision making, and I think Kyle also has to kind of go back to the drawing board and realize there's certain things that we need to do to make him successful. Like, they didn't do a lot.
How about build an offensive line and get him some better weapons and some better speed? The Niners' weapons are freaking slow. I mean, come on. Their O-line's bad and his weapons are slow. I mean, that's the reality.
He doesn't have good receivers. Like, I watch, look at Burrow. You got a guy like Chase. You got Sam Darnold's killer. He's got two of the best man cover receivers. Go get me I cry when I see other teams have like Justin Jefferson. I'm like, I could die for that guy. Like, we have good players in our scheme, but they're not like Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk. They're not the best receivers in the league. They're good. I like them, but it's just they have good players within their scheme. But on any other team, they'd just be a guy. Like on the Niners, they're a guy. But another team, just another guy. Like Kittle, he's special. Get him the ball more. But I like what I saw per Saul. Maybe he could kind of develop a little bit more. I think the big loss this year was not having CMC. Like, he changed everything. He made Brock Purdy 10 times better than he is. And I think that's a huge loss. If the 49ers
it wasn't just, I agree with you. It's not just the loss, though. It was the loss and then what was coming next behind Ayuk. To me, like, their receivers, I mean, Pearsall and Cowing, they drafted them. They want them to be the future, but they weren't ready to step in for Ayuk.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it wasn't that you just lost Ayuk and you lost Ayuk and you didn't have anybody.